Amen, 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 amen. Kingdom, greetings and God's richest blessings be multiplied to you and to His beloved family. You're tuned into another segment of Healing Our Lands, live interactive, worldwide broadcast exclusively here on the Boston Praise Radio and TV Network. I'm your host, Pastor Hobbs. We'll be with you through till 6 p.m. We broadcast Tuesday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday evening, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm live here in the studio with my special guest from T.P.P. And I'm going to jump right into the interview. I'm so excited for my brothers being here with us on this afternoon. We've been trying to make this happen for a little bit, and God sovereignly orchestrated for it to be tonight. So welcome, brothers. How are you both?
Peace. I'm doing good.
I'm doing great.
Awesome. So I am going to not even try to introduce. I know it's Transformational Prison Project, T.P.P. That I do know. Mm-hmm. So with that said, I'm going to pass it right over to my brother Armond Coleman and let you articulate the vision, who you guys are, and you can go from there.
Yes. As you said, my name is Armond Coleman, and I am the proud executive director of the Transformational Prison Project, a program born in the belly of the beast, within Massachusetts' largest correctional facilities with the most lifers and long-termers, founded for the purpose of healing and just getting our brothers and sisters home to do this great work. And today the work that we do is basically a manifestation of a vision we had inside these prisons, and now we're just walking into it.
Outstanding. And we being whom, if you would you mind introducing your colleague?
Well, you're not going to try out my last name?
No, sir. Not even.
My name is Bobby Iacoviello. I am the Director of Community Outreach for the Transformational Prison Project, and I'm grateful to be here today. And as Armond said, we were doing this work while we are incarcerated behind the wall, incarcerated at a very young age, right? Thinking that there was no hope, no way out, right? And juvenile laws changed, a bunch of laws changed, and it gave us that hope to come home and continue this work in the community.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Outstanding. So how long has T.P.P. been in existence?
So we've been doing this work inside the prisons since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
However, the actual work of the Transformational Prison Project Beyond the Wall began in 2020, circa 21, post-COVID. So it was around that time that I came home in 2019. I think Bobby came home in 2020.
19
as well.
Couple months after you.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah. Then another one of our brothers came home, our senior director of programs, and we just went to work to put into effect the same things we were doing internally, externally. So
wow.
We realized years ago, when this work was transforming our lives and transforming the prison system, to say the least, especially MCI Norfolk, into a restorative environment that had real world applications, and we just couldn't wait to bring it home and do it. So I like to say that all the work that I did inside and we did inside was just like practice, if you will, for us to do it in the real world. So.
Wow. Now, there's another colleague that couldn't be with you today, and what is his name? What is his capacity?
Yeah. So Ronnie Elliott, he actually activates as our youthful offender coordinator. Like myself, Ronnie Elliott is somebody who went to prison at the age of 17 or maybe 16, I don't know, for a loss of life crime, sentenced to life, and then the laws changed around youthful brain development. And they said, you know what? We can't send his children to life in prison. And like myself, he's now home doing the great work. He transformed his life while incarcerated through restorative justice. And today he actually is the person who we charge with basically getting all the youthful offenders who came home and who are out here who want to actually participate in restorative justice work and T.P.P. programming. He's the guy who wrangles them, and he's the magic maker when it comes to youthful offenders.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm curious. Talk about a little bit about both of your stories, if you don't mind, just for people to be able to have a context in terms of what preceded you being ultimately incarcerated.
Yeah, so I'll start. So I was born and raised in Queens, New York, and and I grew up with a mother who was a single mother, and she struggled to raise me. So we kind of like lived a lot of our time with my grandparents. My grandparents had a 2.5 bedroom home that actually housed 13 of us in that same house. And so as you could imagine, resources were scarce. And I had uncles who were like immediately older than me, some 2 years in age, some 1 year in age, some 10, some 11, right? And so they kind of like navigated the streets in the way they navigated the streets. And like I always say, I say that I eventually went into the streets and did a lot of destructive things, but I didn't learn those things in the street. I learned those things in my own household. So it was literally in my bedroom under my mattress where my uncles would stash their guns, they would stash their drugs, and they were the primary role models that I had at the time. And I eventually followed them into this world, this destructive world of drugs, crime, and eventually will lead to me committing a homicide at the age of 17 and being sentenced to life in prison. So while I was inside the prison system, I actually spent 28 years incarcerated. I spent 2 decades in maximum security prison. I spent over a decade straight in solitary confinement.
Wow.
And I actually believed at one point that I was on a pathway to become the greatest gangster ever. I really believed that in my own head. And then around 2013.
I'm sorry, did you say 10 years straight of solitary confinement?
Yeah, well, I lied. It was 9 years, 346 days. So it was 10 days short of 10 years that I spent in solitary confinement. And then kind of in 2013, I went to Norfolk, and the restorative justice group was already operable. They were already doing work. And I immediately got into the work and became a leader in the work. Me and Bobby and Noble, who's on our team as well. And we actually started doing work with something called the Youthful Offender Group, the Young Men Exclusive, which became the Young Men Evolution, where we were charged with giving restorative justice service to the youngest demographic in the prison. So anybody between the ages of 18 and 25, we were charged with actually bringing restorative justice services and programs to them. And it became the most robust program of the 13 different restorative justice programs that we had in the prison. So in Norfolk, we really started with one 8-week reading group, and we expanded to 13 different groups in the prison, and then we expanded outward to 6 different prisons in the Commonwealth, including the women's prison in Norfolk. So,
wow. Amazing. Bobby?
Yeah, so for me, I was kind of like born in the system in some shape or form. Like I say that because like my mother and father weren't together when I was born, so right off rip there's like a custody battle where I would live, right? They granted custody to my mother, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, I love my mom and everything,
Sure.
but she wasn't fit to raise me at that time. She had drug and alcohol problems. So at a very young age, I got to basically do what I wanted, and I got very active in the streets before I was even a teenager. Eventually, my father did get custody of me when I was a teenager, but right at the time he got custody of me, I got my first arrest. I was in the 7th grade.
Wow.
And I never left the criminal justice system from the 7th grade till I was 32 years old.
Wow.
So I continued to be involved in the system, and it wasn't until right after high school I ended up committing a homicide, and I was sentenced to a life sentence. And when I was sentenced to a life sentence, I remember going up to Walpole, and Walpole was classification at that time. Then I went to Sousa Baranowski, and I remember when I went to that facility, it was the same people that were in DYS or the criminal justice system or on the street, that the same people were up there. So I basically grew up inside the prison system. And then years later, I finally got to a medium security prison. And when I got to that prison, I was introduced to restorative practices. It was 2014. I remember walking around, and my transition from a maximum security prison to a medium was very difficult for me. It was actually, and Armond says this all the time, which I have to jump on his saying that, you know, it was easier for me to transition from incarceration to the street than it was from a maximum security prison to a medium security prison.
Wow.
It was just much different. You can actually see individuals, the color of their skin is like a gray tint because you don't get sunlight, you're constantly locked in, and but that's neither here nor there. But when I stepped foot in the camp, a couple older individuals, I seen them doing something called restorative justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of individuals that I looked up to, that was respected in the facility, and all across the facilities, right? And I said, how are they doing this programming, right? And I tried it out. I had a couple people sit me down, like, hey, try this out. I wanted to do it, but my pride was pushing me away from it. Plus, I didn't want to be vulnerable. You know, I didn't really know how to. So I remember individuals sat me down. I was in a young men's exclusive circle. Young men between the ages, I think 17 at that time. So I don't think they changed the to 30. We pushed it up to 30 to get everybody in their 20s in there.
Mm-hmm.
And one by one, individuals started talking about their trauma. And it opened up so much for me, right? Things I never even thought of in my life, that I pushed away, I buried, right? And a lot came up for me, and then I spoke about things that I've been through in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to do more work on myself with this restorative practices.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the reason why I act the way I do is because of what I've been through in the past, right? It was that thing that led to a thing that led to another thing that got me in the place that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And for no reason am I saying that I'm not taking accountability for my actions, because restorative justice actually taught me what true accountability was.
Mm-hmm.
After I dealt with my trauma, after I was able to express it and pinpoint it, then I was able to understand the harm that I committed to my victim, to my victim's family, and to my community.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there was victims, mothers that lost their children to gun violence used to sit in circle with us inside prison, right? And talk about forgiveness and how they lost their child. And it so much came up for me because I couldn't look at the person that passed away in my case, anything past the fact of why I was incarcerated, right? Because sometimes when you get incarcerated, well, all the time when you get incarcerated, let me backstep on that, right? They charge you with something and they hit everything at you. They don't tell the real truth about what really happened, even if something did or didn't happen, right? So I'm focused on that, right? Like, that's not what happened. Like, you know, when I was able to get past that and look at individuals as human beings, get past all that, right? I was able to understand what accountability is, how I harmed so many people with just my actions, including my own family. Every single time, every day I spent in there, my family did the time with me, you know? So I ended up continuing this positive, productive path while I was incarcerated. I became a leader inside the young men's exclusive team. I kept on this path, and eventually I ended up overturning my case, luckily, right? But that doesn't mean it goes away, right? So I had to go back to trial. My sentence was vacated, but when I was about to go back to trial, they offered me a manslaughter. Excuse me. And I took it. I pled guilty to manslaughter, 14 years. I served a little bit over 12 years. And I think what was something that I knew I changed, right, is there's something called the victim impact statement, right? And the victims, the people that were affected by the crime, get up there and they actually talk about, you know, their trauma, what they've been through, whatever, face to face inside the courtroom. And I actually spoke. You don't have to speak. And I got up there and I spoke about my restorative practices, my journey, and how I'm willing to sit down in a restorative space with anybody that was affected by my crime. something that I would never have done in the past because I wasn't in tune with my own trauma, right? And a year later, I was released. I was released, I think, 4 months after Armond, or maybe 2 months, around that time, October 22nd, 2019. And I continued to go on this work and go on this path. And we linked up. We restructured the Transformational Prison Project and people that were incarcerated or affected by the system, right? And we continued it, and we're pretty much everywhere right now.
Where are you now?
So we are in Suffolk County, South Bay. Armond does circles there with the young men that's in there. We also were doing circles at Nashua Street, but that's on hold for right now. We're also in the Department of Youth Services, so that is jail or prison for individuals that are 12 to 20, right? We actually are in 2 facilities in the metro region. We go to 3 different units and actually walk inside the facility, sit down with the youth that are incarcerated, and run circles. We do the same thing we do in South Bay. And today was our first day we stepped foot in the Department of Corrections. So hopefully we can get back into the state prisons where we were,
awesome,
right?
yes.
And continue this work and have a good reentry plan for people coming home and actually showing them, like that you can make it. But it's not going to be easy. It's not.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. So when you go into the places that you go, I mean, this is a tremendous story that you've been able to do this work, right, on yourselves, right? I mean, my sister I'm one of 13 children born to a Pentecostal bishop. My dad just transitioned in March of last year, and I was talking to my sister now, who is the person who's pastoring the church that my father is the founder of. And one of the things she said in the conversation, or something, was to the essence of life. Basically, is a sentence. I thought that was pretty profound, right? Because when you think about it, because we're born, right? And we're born, and we don't know how long we're gonna live. We don't know, but the fact that we're spirit beings having a human experience. And but in the element of time, right, there's infinity and then there's finite, right? So infinity has no beginning or no end, right? So ultimately our soul, I believe, is housed in our body for a time and space to have an impact on the world. But ultimately none of us are going to live forever, right? Because our body just holds, again, our soul in space and in time. So in that context, she's saying life basically is, or time is a sentence. And what are you going to do with that sentence, right? Not in a negative way, but understand the urgency of the sentence and the gift. So for people who are incarcerated to hear this kind of deep work that people are doing, and some folks don't do that work. Talk about that a little bit, because again, you all were fortunate to be able to be a part of these healing circles and restorative justice and doing that work. But until you was introduced into those practices, and even you shared, even being introduced to it, the intrepidation about entering and being vulnerable to do something different. So talk to me a little bit about, about that, the work that one has to do, because even if you're incarcerated, the time can do you, or you can do the time.
Absolutely.
So talk about that little piece, because many people, there's a lot of focus right now on returning citizens, on the heels of George Floyd and Black Lives Matters. So now the buzzword, there seems to be some resources, and people are focusing all of a sudden now on returning citizens. But we know, so to be gifted to know how to empower and to mentor returning citizens, because as you said, it's not easy. And everybody that has not made the success that you gentlemen have made, and some other folks.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying the unique nature of our origin story is that we started with what you could call it a program, right? Because it was actually considered a prisoner self-help program. But we took an approach that other programs wouldn't take. So, okay, I'm sitting in prison serving life. Bobby's sitting in prison serving life. 8 of our 9 founders are sitting in prison serving life. and they consider some of the most worst that the state has to offer, right? But when it comes to program and rehabilitative services, we're the last ones to be able to get services in prison. So we had to create a program for ourselves. Literally, if I wanted to go in and be like, I want to do, I don't want to name any program, right? But any program. Unless I knew somebody in there, I wouldn't be able to get in that program. Or maybe that program would have one slot for somebody who's a lifer, like myself or like Bobby, because we're not prioritized. We took a different approach. We said, no. 50% of the people in our program space has to be lifers, period, in the story. And that's how we found our work. Literally, if we have a group of 20 people, or we wanted 10 lifers in there. Even though people say, oh, they never coming home, what's the purpose of rehabilitating them? What's the purpose of healing them? And it was simple. We said we wanted to change places of harm into places of healing. And that prison space was the place where the most harm we thought was happening. And that harm would eventually spill over into society, right? And cause more harm. So we had to create a space where we could do our own healing, and that's what we did. So when it came to trepidation, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was, like I told you, I just gave you my whole backdrop of the time I did in prison. I've been through a lot, and I was never afraid in prison ever. And the hardest thing I ever did in prison, the only time I was ever scared, is when I had to step in that space and actually face what happened to me as a child. Start articulating what happened to me as a child. Just realizing that and taking accountability for what I did as well. Though that was the hardest years of my sin. And not only that, I had to renounce the way I always saw things in prison, which was easy for me, with a progression, right? I actually learned through that space, in that space, through people in those programs, that violence was the lowest form of communication. And that's the form that I actually articulated myself with the most. So I literally had to denounce that and start moving in a way that I had to communicate and talk to people in ways that was not hurtful. So it was a journey, but it was a journey that I was able to take because you had brothers like my brother Robert, Bobby, and others that literally was there with you. So we was all learning this together. We was all going through this together, and that was the thing for me. Like, oh, wait a minute, he's just as much on unshaky ground and unstable ground as me. So in my mind, kind of like when in our reentry, that gives me the vision and the boldness to do it because we all doing it together, right? And we all learning from each other. Kind of like you said, we all mentoring each other and we all supporting each other. And Bobby articulated earlier about transitioning from a maximum security prison to what's considered a community prison in Norfolk. I didn't even know how to operate in that system. If brothers like him and like just say, yo, you come over here today, do this today. No, you can't go over there. Come over here. I would have never made it. I would have never have made it. And they held my hand until I was able to begin to hold the hand for others that was coming in that same space. And I was in a unique position where, because of my resume amongst my peers, I had a reputation that was beyond reproach. So when I started doing the right thing, and I started showing good leadership in that prison setting, my other peers that was coming from mass security prisons was like, oh, okay, all right, when they came and see Bobby, they're like, oh, okay. What people don't realize is that the people who founded these organizations, the people who founded T.P.P. externally and internally, were literally considered some of the worst, right? But they was also considered leaders amongst the worst as well. So once they started leading in this positive healing trajectory, a lot of people were going to come on this journey with them. And that was our vision from the beginning when we started with the lifers. We started with the lifers that we knew everybody respected in the prison system, that everybody would follow. And we know once you get them on your side, get them on your team, moving in your direction, the rest was kind of like easy. I always tell people all the time, the only problem that we ever had, and Bobby could attest to this, the biggest problem I should say that we had inside of the institutions with other prisoners was that we just tell people, we don't have enough space for you. And I'm talking about the youngest demographic, the ones that people say don't want to do nothing. We literally like, yo, we only got 20 spaces or 30 spaces. Dudes literally want to fight. I mean, they or I'd be like, yo, you 30 years old now, dude. You're done with our program. You can move on. They're like, no. We want to be in this space because and it's simple. I think it's simple is that You build community in that
That's it.
space. You build community in that space.
Yeah.
Everybody know, and I'm literally sharing with Bobby. I shared in that space stuff that I never shared in my life.
Sure.
With anybody. So he knows my whole life.
Wow.
I know his whole life. We share it now publicly, but at that point in time, we only shared it with each other. So we was holding each other's secrets, right? And we was holding each other as we was healing. So that was something that never happened. That's something that never happened, and it's something that you could never replicate. I mean, so.
You know, do you want to say anything about that?
I mean, I have a lot to say. You can ask another question if you want. I could go on forever. But I just do want to say that I know you brought up about programming. There's a certain amount of spots that he hit on.
Yeah.
And I think the best program is incarcerated ran programming, right? Because some programming is not the best programming. And it starts while you're on the inside, but sometimes it's not there for everybody. It depends on what facility you're in. Like Susan Baranowski's very limited programming, right? So how are you going to be able to work on yourself if it's not there?
Right.
And then when you get to the transition part of it, that's a whole new ball game, right? You could do so much work on yourself, right? Then you come home, like me and Armond, he came home, and they said there was so much resources out here, and there was nothing but us. If it wasn't for Armond and Noble and people that work with me now to circle around me, I don't know what I would have done. Especially for long term, it's coming home, right? And people don't tell you that, like you're gonna have a lot of mental problems. Like, I'm not saying in the sense that you're crazy, right? But you're gonna have emotional problems. Being in there your whole life since you were a young person, coming home to everybody's grown or on different paths, right? How people that were incarcerated more than you know your own family, because was your family for so long, right? Just trying to deal with that. Then getting a job, right? Then getting a job that actually you can live in Boston.
How about that?
Or this area, Suffolk County in general, right? Then it's getting an apartment, all that. Like, I got denied 40 times for an apartment, and I had a good job, good credit, just because of my record. Like, people don't tell you that, right? People are like, oh, you can do it. There is no way you're going to be able to do everything by yourself. You need community support. You need people. And that's the biggest downfall of individuals when they come home is there's so many things saying that it's out here for people, but where is it at? I'm not trying to downplay.
It's real. No, it's
real. Trying to be honest.
And I want to dovetail on what Bobby said. Like, think about this. When I went to prison, I was 17 years old. When I came out, I was 46 years old.
Wow.
I mean, so think about relationship IQ. I don't know. I didn't know how to. At first, be honest, I never even learned how to govern a relationship like between men without being violent and aggressive until I went to Norfolk. Like, whenever I was that didn't work. Right, but then you still don't have a relationship with women. I never paid a bill in my life. I never did none of that. But I'm older than mostly everybody in my peer group when I come out, and they thinking, why does dude doesn't have it together?
Right.
I mean, the internet didn't even exist when I went into prison, right? So the internet.
I was just gonna say the internet. Add that whole digital divide in technology.
He's a little older than me.
And somebody laid it out to me before. If you look at the history. And we're not doing history lessons here, but from the mid-90s to 2000, the world leapt further than it ever leapt in technology and knowledge than ever in the history of the world. And that's the time we were in where you couldn't get nothing.
Wow.
We was fighting to get books and newspapers. Like, literally, we was fighting to get books and newspapers. And the world's already just like literally light years ahead of us. And people are still living in those archaic, like, informational deserts. It's just shocking.
Wow.
And one more thing to add is that we noticed that especially technology was a real huge issue for individuals coming home.
Sure.
Even myself, right? Even though I did 12 years, I did half of what less than half of what he did, right? And we realized that was something that we really needed to implement and individuals come home. So we started a digital literacy class. We linked up with an organization called Maverick Landing Community Services on a grant, and we run anywhere from 15 to 20 individuals that are formerly incarcerated through a digital literacy class. They get stipend to go through it. They get a free computer, but it's also the camaraderie, actually being able to be around peers that if you're on parole or probation that you can't, right?
But that's the rule, but that they will, because of the program, they will circumvent that
Exactly.
that rule.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and even going through those classes, I'm not gonna lie, that doesn't fix everything, because like some guys go through the class and still have a lot of trouble, right? Like, but it's like something that just try to give them that step there,
Basic
right?
foundation.
Because if you don't know what an email is, which most individuals don't, they think an email is like something like a text message would be in there. You can email somebody in there, but it's like a text that will go to kiosks or something to that extent, right?
Right.
It's not an email.
Right.
So like you can't even work nowadays without emails.
Nah.
And people have no clue what that is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
no, it's interesting. The digital divide. That's a big piece of technology. Is moving so fast. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to one the spots. So you said where so the capacity thing, right? So is that something that what would it take to build more capacity for you to be able to do what you're doing and afford more spots? What would it take?
Yeah, I'm saying, so the vision that we had was that, and we realized a long time ago, was that, like Bobby said earlier, the best people to like create these programs and lead these programs are people who actually went through these programs or went through the same hell that we went through, right?
Yeah.
I could relate and connect with you.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of men and women that come home that they like are circle keepers beyond anything that I've ever seen anybody else do out here.
Mm-hmm.
But they literally come home and don't have the ability to make a living, right, doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're the first organization that I know of that people who are lead restorative justice keepers inside these institutions could come home and apply their craft and get paid to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, and probably be able to make a wage that could help them make them live in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this all the time. When I first came home from Boston, I came home. I wasn't the first of the founders to come home. We all had a mission that when we come home, we was going to continue this work. However, none of them were able to maintain, be employed, make the money they need to make, and still do the work without, right? So we had to find a way to get paid to do the work, and make it secondary only to our reentry, right? Our primary thing to do, and that we just found a way to do it. And the way we found a way to do that is just building. We have resources of people who say, you know what, we're going to give you funding, we're going to give you this money to be able to do your work and focus on your work exclusively and make the impact that we know you can make. And for them, it wasn't hard to make it because most of them already came to Norfolk and seen us make that impact in that most hostile environment, right? We were practicing restorative justice on the most encourageable population, quote unquote, in a hostile environment, as opposed to people who are out here practicing restorative justice in an ideal environment, against people who are like D-class misdemeanors. I mean, that's a totally different dynamic. So, but I know it's a long answer. A long answer to a short question is that I think we're in a unique position and we are blessed that we have a pipeline of leaders that are coming out who are doing, like, I look at the prison system as our farm system. So when these brothers come home, if we had the money, we could literally plug them in and say, you go over here. The problem with us right now is that we got way more work than we got the capacity to do.
To pay.
Yeah, or even women and manpower to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. And pay. We had to pay. That would be eradicated immediately because we know many people that would do it. Right. We know people who are doing other jobs that come in and do this job, and they know we could pay them to do it. So, it's no shortage. I think in Massachusetts, there's no shortage of people who could do the work. It's just shortage of people who will be able to resource the work.
Well, I'm glad you're saying that because here, this is sharing this kind of information on this platform, utilizing technology, right? This is a worldwide platform, and 20 social media platforms. This will be recorded and re-aired. It will go viral. So this is a great beginning of a conversation, and I'm so humbled really to be able to have you brothers here. We've connected a little bit in the community, right, doing re-entry fairs and re-entry summits with Daniel Williams and Prophetic Resistance, and some of the other work I'm with Democracy Behind Bars Coalition, with some advocacy legislation. We're working to be able to push this felony reenfranchisement. That's the biggest piece, right, because that would afford brothers who are presently serving felony convictions and sisters the opportunity to be able to exercise their right to vote. And we know this tremendous work that folks are doing behind the wall. It's just absurd that and the African American Coalition Committee out of MCI Norfolk, where you guys know the brothers there, wrote this piece of legislation. They wrote the legislation. They wrote this specific piece of legislation that's restoring felony rights for people to vote that was taken from them in 2000. This is for our listening and viewing audience who doesn't understand that history. And I would submit, and I learned from the African American Coalition Committee, Brother Alamin, that's largely why they stripped it, was because of the effectiveness of the work that the brothers were doing behind the wall and getting people elected and shaking and disrupting the status quo. So let's strip you of that power so that you can't continue to do that. So it takes a constitutional amendment literally to be able to restore that. And we're the third state in the country to move it this far, that it is on. It passed the House, it passed the Senate. It's sitting on the constitutional agenda to now be pulled and ultimately passed. So I'm encouraging everyone to call your elected officials, call the governor, call your representatives, and we got to get this over the finish line so that we can restore felony rights for folks who are presently incarcerated. And when I go into Nashua or South Bay in particular, this is what I'm hearing, right? Even from the brothers, they're saying, because if people who don't know, if you are in Massachusetts and you are incarcerated and you're not presently serving a felony conviction, you can vote. If you're serving a misdemeanor, if you are waiting pre-trial, you can vote. You're specially qualified to vote. In fact, you don't even need to register. You can just participate via absentee ballot. So that's information people should know. If you are been incarcerated and you're now released and you're on parole or probation, even if you've served a felony, you can vote. Right. I need to just say that because people don't understand that information. People, I can't vote. No, you can. So we need to know that and spread that word. But with that said, what I'm constantly hearing from people who are serving felony convictions is that's what y'all need to fight for, as well as from the African American Coalition Committee, right?
Absolutely.
So.
Can I say something?
Please.
I think that's important because, as a person who went into prison when voting rights were allowed, before the disenfranchisement of incarcerated people, I was in prison when you could vote, basically. Right?
Wow.
And I was there when they actually took the right to vote. And I will tell you this, just looking back, you could see that the deterioration of rights and access and services literally started when the right to vote left, right?
Wow.
When people was voting, we literally had access to people coming in. They was patronizing people to vote, and you literally had programming, you have access, you had everything. You not everything, but you had better conditions in these prison systems. The conditions literally started to deteriorate once the right to vote was removed.
Wow.
It's to the point now where I tell other people all the time. I said, if you're in a prison, they tell you, okay, Bobby, you did something wrong. You broke a rule. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take your phone. So literally, their job is to make Bobby a better citizen, right? So he can reintegrate to society. How are you taking access from society, helping him? How are you taking his visits? Like, those makes no sense.
None.
It makes no sense, and it wouldn't have done that if, like I said, the right to vote was still there. None of that would be in existence. When prisoners was voting, they were talking about conjugal visits, right? When prisoners was voting, they was giving furloughs, right? So it was a whole different dynamic in play from when they took the vote, right? So I mean, it's a reason why I think voting is an inalienable right for American citizens.
That's right.
It's that way for a reason.
For a reason.
One more thing I wanted to add too, because if people are thinking that they're against this,
Against people voting.
I'm saying just people that are
who might have that
against-
mindset.
It might be people that are,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I just want people to think of it.
You think so? You think so?
Unfortunately.
I mean, we're in a country that everybody's divided in some shape or form, right? So why not it be that, right? But I just want everybody to think about this,
Yeah.
right? Is that when a crime is committed, you are sentenced.
That's right.
Your punishment is to be taken away from society,
That's it.
not to be continuously punished while you're incarcerated.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You know, we got into this mindset of tough on crime that you got to continuously be. No, I was away from my family for 12 years.
Yes.
I was not able to be a citizen, right? But one big factor of it is that nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors, but the people that are there.
Right.
So they should have the right to put certain people in offices that can make things better for the whole society.
That's right.
Not just, you know,
That's right.
that person that committed a crime.
That's right.
Their sentence is there. They're not going nowhere. They're there.
Yeah.
But to go inside prison and see the living conditions and
Yeah.
solitary confinement, which is very inhumane,
Inhumane.
and all they do is just change the name of it. Instead of saying solitary confinement, they call it SMU or SHU,
SCG,
or they just change the name of it. It's the same exact thing. But people on the outside would be like, oh, they don't have solitary confinement
Right.
anymore.
I've heard people
you know,
say
but they
that.
don't know,
Right,
you know, right?
right.
So, and another part of it is it's just the living conditions in general, man. Like I was in there.
Can I say something to that point before you move on?
Go ahead, of course.
Because he said he made an important distinction, and I think anybody who's against people, not anybody, but the majority of people who would say they were against somebody voting in prison, they would say no, they were in prison to be punished. And that's not true. Being in prison is your punishment.
That's right.
You're not there, and that's the mentality that the DOC has. That's the mentality that everybody that's against prisoners having rights has.
Yeah.
But in reality, you're not there to be punished.
No.
Being there is your punishment.
That's it.
And you make that distinction, it's like a lot of those false defenses go away.
Absolutely.
One more thing to add to that
Yeah,
before
Yeah.
like I said, I could talk a lot.
It's all good. No.
I think
beautiful.
too, one big thing that you know we are definitely in support of is getting rid of joint venture. Because that, and we might have you're probably going to bring that up.
No, go
as
for
well,
it. This is a
but,
great,
like,
this is a
another
great
part of
segue.
it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
a lot of individuals that are incarcerated for a crime that they didn't physically commit,
Yeah.
but they're serving a natural life sentence. And actually, sometimes, majority of the times, the individual that actually commits the crime actually goes home.
How about that?
And individuals are serving, and this is only impacting black and brown communities or poor communities. Like, it's deliberately, this law is in place just to affect individuals from certain communities.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand. Let's just say, for instance, right, us three, we're out. We're all friends, we're out, and I shoot somebody and I kill them. What they usually do is they separate the trials, and we all get charged with first-degree murder. And but you will all be charged with joint venture. Doesn't matter if you did it or not. As long as you're there, the law is that you have the same mindset as the individual that pulled the trigger. So say if I go to trial and I get found not guilty, both of you get found guilty, you both are doing natural life sentences. It doesn't matter. So we have numerous amount of individuals that are in there for decades and decades, not even the main participant in the crime, right? And being able to just give an individual, and we're not saying, well, I mean, I would say let everybody out, right? But most people won't, right? But we're not saying, hey, let's just let everybody out, but at least give individuals a possibility of parole. There's a parole board set in place in Massachusetts for a reason. They look at your record, they see your rehabilitation, and then they let you out and you serve your sentence on the street, just like Armand's doing right now. Armand is still serving his sentence right now on the street,
Wow.
right? And he will be for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's how that goes.
Yes, that's how it goes. So it's not like, hey, we're just gonna let everybody come home. Right? This practice is amazing, and I can go in on that too. How that's that's unconstitutional and everything around that. But that's all people are asking for. Let these people come home. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for like. I think and I'm not trying to get into national politics, but I'm only going to say it because it impacted me, right? Is that the world is like quick to like jump on these trends of like tough on crime, and these new laws come into place, but it's hard to undo these things when they get done. My case in point is that when I was growing up, if I got in trouble for a crime, usually when I was 15, 14, 13, they would call my parents to just come get me, to take me home. And then the Central Park jogger case happened, right, where teens in New York was accused of raping. Yeah. And you know what? They was convicted.
Right.
Falsely, but albeit they were convicted, right?
Yeah.
And youthful offender laws swept the nation.
Yeah.
They was criminalized. We had a super predator sweep every state. I don't know about every state, but I'm damn near every state passed.
Sure.
Tough on crime related to youthful offenders, right? And now that's why you got people who are in prison doing life that went in at 14, 13, 12. It's like, that's ridiculous. Somebody in prison, that's ridiculous. But think about it. 20 years later, they found out those guys who was the impetus for all these changes didn't do the crime.
How about that?
Nobody said, "Yo, let's go back and undo.
Right.
Let's go back and undo these falsely motivated." No, it's like they're there. Yeah. They're stuck. And now even when the Supreme Court says, you know what, science backs us up and says that they shouldn't be in prison for life, right?
Right.
On top of it, you still can't undo it. Right. It's like it's never going to get unrung. I don't know what's going to take to get unrung, but it needs to be. It needs to be rectified.
Yeah.
It needs to be rectified.
No, I appreciate that. And so joint venture, and talk about that a little bit. Joint venture, as well as we talked about. So you're talking about life. So essentially, what's the language? So you are on, what they consider your parole for life?
Yes, I'm a lifetime parolee.
Life parolee.
Like Bobby said, I'm not released. I have a certificate of release that can be revoked anytime without due process. Full stop.
Wow. 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 That's very sobering. and so that's not right. So that's, as we're looking at, doing advocacy and these other kind of things, I know there's a major rally happening at the State House. I want to say September 20th, if I'm not mistaken. And I know joint venture, as well as they're talking about a lot of legislation. And so parole and those kinds of things. So I'll be there. Other folks will be there. And we're encouraging everybody to come on out and let's be able to push these pieces of legislation in a positive way against what you're talking about. We're at right now, again, as you said, this has this pendulum that kind of swings to the left and swings to the right, contingent upon the climate of what's happening. Or it could be one case. It could be this Charles Stewart case or something crazy. You know what I'm saying? Just swings the pendulum to tough on crime. When the truth of the matter is that, again, we need to be able to do stuff that is correction. It always should be about correction and not perpetual punishment, right? There's a difference between correction, right, and this notion of, I think that's, the correction system and the, what's another language that they use that's in contrast to that? So direct corrections and, I can't think of the other word right now. So, because there's just I guess it's a mindset or an ideology of punishment or correction, right? And the punishment, as you've already said, is taking your freedom from you. So it should always be about correction, if that's what this is all supposed to be about. We're putting you away to be able to fix you, rehabilitate
you, like get you to the point where you can come back into society and live as a productive member.
Yes.
But sometimes that's not always the case, and I think from what Armond and Ian, you said, right, like the tough on crime era really changed all of that, and a lot of that stuff was debunked. Super predator was debunked. It was like, that's not even true, and nothing changed. But I do want to add more quick thing too, right, is that another people that might be thinking that what we're saying is crazy, right? But people would never said that I would never make it, that I was far beyond lost. The person that was the victim in my case was an off-duty police officer. I wasn't able to leave a maximum security prison even if I was doing good or bad.
Wow.
So, and people never thought I was coming home.
Wow.
And what helped me was not only restorative justice, was older individuals that are serving natural life sentence, not what I'm serving, right? Meaning they're never coming home. People changed my life and put me on the right direction. and said, you can do this. You can go to school. You can do restorative classes. You can make it out there when everybody told me I wasn't. And those men are still in there under joint venture or under natural life sentences that they can never come home. Now, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be the person I was today. I would have flipped my case and came home and destructed my community. You know? So it's like, to say, you know, if these people don't deserve a chance, I wouldn't have had a chance if it wasn't for those people, you know? And people change. People age out of crime.
Sure.
They do.
Sure.
And I don't ever want to take back or hold back the crime that was committed. Everybody should be accountable for what they do. But doing a natural life sentence, being under joint venture and never coming home is something that Massachusetts is against. Because we're against, we don't have the electric chair no more, right? We don't have death, right? But we do. That's death by incarceration. That's a natural life sentence. You will never come home unless you come home in a box. Just think about that for a minute. Like, they'll never come home. You got guys in there that are 70, committed crimes when they were 19, will never come home. And one more thing I would like to add is that we're strong supporters of raising the juvenile age because there's neuroscience to back it up. The juvenile age, the youthful offender age should be raised to at least 21. There's neuroscience to back this up. So if you were 18 and 1 day old and you committed a crime, you can get a natural life sentence. But if you were 17 and a day before your 18th birthday, you can get a parole eligibility. What the hell is the difference? And once again, and I'm so proud of myself I didn't swear. Like, it's really hard for me not to swear. And so, but right? To get back, right? Just think about that for a minute. Like, we have a parole system in place.
Yeah.
And they should have the eligibility or the chance to go in front of this parole board and show that they rehabilitated themselves and they can serve that sentence on the street. And if you committed a crime at 18, 19, and 20, why not? Why shouldn't you have the chance to do that, right? But
no, you're right on point, man. Listen, believe it or not, brothers, we have literally 4 minutes before we're at the top of the hour.
You let me talk.
No, listen, this is a wonderful thing. I've loved this, and this is really informative and powerful. Just the beginning of many conversations. That's not just about conversation, but to be the impetus for us to be able to build capacity and to for prevention as well as for intervention. And so as we have just 3 minutes before we go to the top of the hour, I'm going to ask people who are tuned in if you could give us a call at 617-282-0685. You can write us at 670 Washington Street, Dorchester, Mass. 02124. You can email me if you like at pastorfranklinhobbs@gmail.com. If you're interested in being able to communicate with our brothers from Transformational Prison Project, how can they reach you guys?
You can call me. You can email me. My email is bobby@transformprison.org. And you could call me and text me at 781-808-6360. I'm always open to having conversation. I'm always open to helping somebody. And if I can't give you the right resources or the right knowledge, I will send you in the right direction to do that.
Outstanding. Anything you want to add, Brother Armond?
No. Contact Bobby.
Okay, he said contact Bobby.
How'd you get this?
Bobby. Yes, sir. He's the man. He made it happen.
Pick him up and drive him over there too.
Listen, and I know you all just been traveling and so forth, so I really do appreciate the sacrifice. But I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, again, our broadcast time is from 4 to what did I say? 4 to 5. 4 to. Why am I delirious right now? 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
4 to 6. So it's 5 now. So are you guys able to hang around on the other side of the top of the hour, or do you want to do it another time?
I could chill for a little bit. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, man.
Beautiful. Awesome.
I haven't slept in 2 days, but I'm good.
That's why I asked, because I know y'all are tired, man. So I really do appreciate the sacrifice.
Yeah.
But okay, so stay tuned, fam. We're going to go to our station ID. We'll be back on the other side of the top of the hour. But we want to hear from you. Feel free to engage us. Encourage somebody else to be a part of the second hour as we're building what I call a state of emergency healing and empowering movement that is youth and young adult led and adult and institution support. That is the vision of Healing Our Land ministry. So again, we're going to pause and go to our station ID. We'll be right back.